Well, you know, it's out there, like you say, but, you know, when I was a child, my dad was an base Air Force intelligence officer, and he was called out to pick up some debris from something that crashed northwest of Roswell, New Mexico. And what he did, he saw that this was not anything usual, but the debris was very, very strange. And he brought it by the house so I could see it on his way back to the air base. And when I saw the material, it was a very exotic material. There's a lot of foil. There's some beams that had some strange writing on it. And I realized right off the bat this was not anything that I'd ever seen before, nor since.
Now, I've heard that if you crumpled up the foil and you just let it go, it would just reshape back into a flat piece of foil?
Yeah, I understand that, but I didn't do that myself.
Oh, okay.
I just handled it very, very carefully. But other people said it was like a metal with a memory, but I didn't see that.
What do you remember it feeling like?
Almost like a aluminum wrap. It was very light there, very light, and I didn't try to bend it or tear it or do anything to deform it. And it was just like a metal foil.
You also mentioned there were symbols on it. Can you describe those?
Yeah, on the beam itself there were some strange symbols. The beam itself was about 12 to 18 inches long, and on the inner surface there was some mathematical symbols, solid figures, not flowers like they say it was, but it was more like geometric forms, and kind of a purple violet hue, kind of reflected in the light there. And very, very strange.
Your father was a major in the Air Force?
That's correct, yeah.
And was he kept silent about this whole find?
Well, you know, he brought the material into Colonel Blanchard, who was the base commander, who realized, hey, this is something very strange, too. So my dad flew it in a B-29 to Fort Worth Air Force, where General Ramey, the base commander, was there. And when he came back the next day from Fort Worth, he sat my mother and myself down saying, don't ever talk about this again. Of course, I'm talking about it. But he says, this is a non-event, didn't happen. And that's the way it stayed for years. But I realized there was something very strange about that.
And not only are you talking about it now, you've actually written a book that details all of this.
Yeah, I'm in the process of writing a book right now. It'll be out later this year. So it's something I want to make sure it's totally accurate and correct in every way. So.
Now, does your book or research mention any of the alien bodies that were found or allegedly is supposed to have been found at that crash site?
Well, yeah, I didn't see any of that. This is all hearsay as far as I'm concerned. Apparently there was two debris fields. You know, there was a primary debris field where I saw parts of, and then there was another debris field further away that if there was bodies, that's where they were.
Talk a little bit about the meeting that you're going to today and the gathering that you're going to.
Well, it's a UFO gathering of interested people investigating UFO events because you know, they're trying to get enough evidence out there to determine that these are really extraterrestrial craft.
Do other people have stories similar to yours?
Oh, there's a lot of them. Yeah, Russia has the same kind of events that we have too.
Now, real quick, Jesse, a lot of the information regarding Roswell has been declassified. Has that helped you at all?
You know, the trouble is it hasn't been declassified.
It hasn't been?
It has
I thought there was a few volumes that have been declassified.
Well, yeah, but there's the Air Force version, and then there's the real version.
I see.
The Air Force version says it was just a mundane object like a weather balloon or a mogul balloon, but I know it wasn't.
Okay. Jesse, thank you so much for coming and joining us this morning. Really appreciate it.
And we are joined now by the granddaughter of the man who retrieved that UFO wreckage in 1947. And she's now State Section Director for Mutual UFO Networks in Los Angeles and can reveal the truth about exactly what happened. Denise Marcel, welcome to Studio 10. Denise, firstly, tell us about your grandfather being called in to inspect that UFO wreckage. What actually happened?
Well, my grandfather was at the base, and he received a call. It was probably around lunchtime because he was eating lunch. And a Sheriff Wilcox called and said that we have got a rancher in our office right now that found something really strange on his property, and that he thought that maybe it could have been something military. So my grandfather went down to the sheriff's station and spoke to the rancher for a bit and thought that it was important enough for him to go back to the base and talk to his CO, which was Colonel Blanchard, And after talking to Colonel Blanchard, he said, yes, why don't you go on out there and investigate what's out there and take whatever you need with you. If you need somebody to go out with you, take them too, which he did. He took a CIC agent by the name of Sheridan Cavett. And they left probably later in the day, because I know that they didn't arrive out to the ranchers. Like, he had a little shack out there, and they spent the night there before they went out to the field to investigate what was on the property. So after they spent the night, the following morning, they went out there, and I'm pretty sure they were pretty astonished to see the magnitude of what was out there. There was just debris that was scattered everywhere. My grandfather thought that it looked like it was something that exploded in the air, and that you could tell the trajectory of where it was coming, because it was in a certain flight pattern, and where it exploded, it fanned out about 3/4 of a mile. Wow. So they spent the good part of the day loading up their vehicle, the carryall that the Sheridan Cavett drove out there. And by the time that was filled up, my grandfather sent Sheridan back to the base before he went, because he wanted to collect more of the material. So he loaded up his car, and then that's where when he left probably around 11 o'clock or so at night, and was heading back towards the base.
And tell us about some of this material that your grandfather says he recovered, and there were some symbols on it as well. Is that right?
Oh. Yes, what happened was when he arrived, he went, because the home was on the way to the base, he decided that he would show my dad and my grandfather what he had found. So he went into the kitchen and had spread everything out on the kitchen floor before he woke them up, which was probably around midnight or so. And when he got them up, he's like, there's something you've got to see. I don't think it's something you're ever going to see again. I think it's probably something from a flying saucer. My dad was about 11 years old at that time, so he was really confused at that term, because he had never heard flying saucer before. In fact, I think that term was coined about a month or two before that from Kenneth Arnold. So when the debris was scattered on the floor, my father noticed that there was an I-beam, which you're looking at right there. It was a kind of metallish-y, balsa woodish looking color, sticking out of a box. And he pulled it out and he held it up over his head, kind of like this, so the light could reflect down onto the I-beam. And when it was reflecting on there, he could see like this purplish writing, and it was like pink kind of hue, reflective metallic color. They all looked at it for a little while, and they also noticed like the debris, the shards, that was just so much of it, but the consistency of it was almost like tin foil, but it was extremely, extremely strong. And they described it as being as light as a feather. So after that, they spent about 20 minutes there looking at this. Then they put it all back into the box, and my father walked out with my grandfather to the car. And while they were loading up the box, my dad noticed that there was a whole bunch of the same material in the trunk and in the back seat of the car.
That's amazing, but they just said it was a weather balloon, didn't they? That's what they came out after and said?
Yes, it's what our government said, that it was a weather balloon, and then they changed it to a mogul balloon, which it wasn't, because my grandfather was an intelligence officer who had studied radar technology, so he knew that's not what he found.
Denise, what would you say to people who would question what your grandfather found and would say it really was a weather balloon? What would you say to them? What evidence? Have you still got any of those particular items?
Oh, I wish we did. I think that would solve I would have our questions answered right now. But no, we don't have anything like that. We never kept anything like that. My grandfather was a military man through and through, and the government wanted it back, and so that's what he did with it.
I would have kept one little bit.
Denise, it is a fascinating story, and thank you so much for sharing with us.
My name is Jack Trowbridge, and I was assigned to Roswell in April of 1947. I was further assigned into intelligence with Jesse Marcel, who was the head of intelligence, a major. I was a first lieutenant pilot. On this particular evening, we're having bridge at Major Marcel's home. And he was there in a basket. My wife was there. All of intelligence was there playing bridge, except Jesse. He was out with a pickup gathering this junk in the debris field. Okay? So when he came in, it was fairly late, I believe. And we broke up the bridge game then to go out and see what Jess had brought in. And it was a great interest. It was aluminum in appearance. There were fragments of aircraft skin or whatever the thing was, and also some girders with pictures of hieroglyphic-like things on it. I took them to be owls, but who knows. Anyhow, it was interesting. I did get to handle the material, and the material had some peculiar properties. For instance, it looked like Hershey bar wrappings, but you squeeze it up in your hand as hard as you could, let go, and it returned originally to the original shape instantly. Then the next day, Jesse brought some of the stuff into the intelligence office. And so we looked at it and played with it a while, and then everybody went back to work. Later that day, boom, nobody knows anything, you just shut up, nothing happened, etc. And when you're in the service, you do what they say to do. Major Marcel was called up to Fort Worth to show the press what he found. Well, what he had to show the press was really a weather balloon. This stuff was not a weather balloon, what he brought back. So he was forced to lie to the press, we say. I don't think he was too happy about it, but you do what you're told again. You're in the service. You followed orders. And they were afraid of the American public panicking with this knowledge. I don't think that would have happened, but hey, the word came down from up above and you do what it says.
None of the materials that we picked up weighed anything. Looked like it was weightless. You couldn't feel that you had anything in your hands. I found one piece of metal, what looked like metal anyway. It was not flexible, but it was as thin as a foil of a pack of cigarettes. It was that thin. One of my boys told me, he said, there's something unusual here. He said, I tried to make a dent in this metal. He says, you can't bend it. You can't make a mark on it. He says, I took a sledgehammer and whammed it. I put it on the ground and whammed it. The sledgehammer bounced off of it. He told me not to say anything. He says, I'll handle it from now on. And that's exactly what he did. When he came out, he said, he told the press that was there, he said, that was nothing but a weather balloon, crashed weather balloon. It was definitely not a weather balloon. And it was an aircraft. So what it could have been, I wouldn't know. I still don't know.
They took pictures, of course. They had a whole flock of microphones there. They wanted me they wanted some comments from me, but I wasn't at liberty to do that. So all I could do is keep my mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who discussed, told the newspapers, I mean the newsmen, what it was and to forget about it. It was nothing more than a weather observation balloon. of course, which we both knew differently. We left Roswell perhaps around 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. As you can see, it's flat. It is very difficult. In fact, with just verbal directions, we never would have found it. We had to follow the rancher out there. The following morning, we went out to the site where the crash was. And what I saw, I couldn't believe there was so much of it. It was scattered over such a vast area. So we proceeded to pick up as much of the debris as we could, load it in the wagon. We filled that up. It took us a good part of the day to do that, because there's such small fragments that we had to do a lot of picking. We found a piece of metal about a 1.5 to 2 feet wide and about 2 or 3 feet long. Felt like you had nothing in your hands. It wasn't any thicker than the foil out of a pack of cigarettes. But the thing about that got me is that you couldn't even bend it, you couldn't dent it. Even with a sledgehammer would bounce off it. So I knew that I had never seen anything like that before. And as of now, I don't know what it was. It was not anything from this earth that I'm quite sure of. Because being an intelligence officer, I was familiar with just about all materials used in aircraft and in our air travel. This is nothing like that. It could not be. It could not have been.